aesthetically not so rewarding wall, but when it comes to the information from the inscriptions, it's extremely interesting. Here we have a range of inscriptions, some of them very fragmentary, like here, others more elaborate, and it contains all kinds of information. I've mentioned some of them in the handout, and if you want to read more about it, I can refer to the website of Rugoye, which is also mentioned in the bibliography. They can find the translations of most of these texts. And it shows that this wall functioned as a sort of billboard in the church. That it was not just visitors writing their name on the wall illegally. No, it was allowed in the first place for visitors to write prayers on the wall. But there were also announcements made. Like, for instance, the death of a monk. So it is announced here that Father so-and-so has died, please pray for his soul. Another inscription, and I think it is this one here, and it's also mentioned in your handout, announces the arrival of a letter from the Patriarch of Antioch to the Patriarch of Alexandria. Which is interesting information after all, because it is the Syrian Patriarch writing to the Coptic one, and here we have a mixed community. So it's like saying that anyone who's interested can ask about it if you want to know more. So this wall contains different kind of inscriptions. Over there, and that's the wall that we can see later on next to the entrance, has even more inscriptions, and that one has, for instance, the text of Mattai and Jakub referring to the reconstruction of the monastery.
There is a line of writing around the wooden doors. Is that also Syriac?
That's also Syriac.
Is it scripture or is it something else?
It is an inscription mentioning the dedication, the rededication of the sanctuary by Moses of Nisibis. So it's the consecration text, you can say.
Thank you.
And then we have a scene here, which is still belonging to the second layer, but not anymore 8th century. This is probably a painting from the late 9th century. Late 9th century. And
what about the children?
I want to tell you. What you see?
Who are the three small persons? The three small persons.
I'm going to tell you. What you see here are the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in paradise with the souls of the blessed on their knees. This is, you can say, well, why is it represented here? You also find it in the 13th century paintings in Deramba Antonius, and it occurs in other contexts as well. Later on, but also in Byzantine painting, for instance, it is part of a large scene of the Last Judgment, where it is on one side with hell on the other side. So it is, but here it is a composition which is without any other element. So here it is just a reference to the hereafter and the blessed in on the knees of the three patriarchs. And it is in fact a reference to the Coptic prayer for the dead, and not only in the Coptic church, but also in the Syrian church. There's in the daily prayers, there is a part which says, God have pity on those who have deceived. May they rest in the bosom of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So it is in fact an illustration of the daily prayers for the well-being of the dead. Recently, this painting has attracted quite some attention, and I don't know if you are aware of it. It was even published on the cover of a Dutch book about the sources of Islam. And maybe you have heard about the writings of Christoph Luxemburg. Does it ring a bell? No. He is a Lebanese scholar who is studying the sources of the Quran and Islam. He's publishing under a pseudonym because he is afraid that if he uses his real name, he will be assassinated soon. But he is arguing that in present-day Islamic theology, there are many misunderstandings which are due to wrong copying of texts. And in this way, he tries to trace back the original version of the Quran. He says, well, what we have now is a Quran where the surahs have been arranged according to their length and not according to their theme or to their chronology. So, and there are many other mistakes due to, for instance, copying of manuscripts. Well, this has been done for the Bible already. Already in the 19th century, scholars started realizing that the Bible contains many mistakes in translation and copying and so on. And that, for instance, the books of Moses were not really written by Moses, but that already the book of Genesis is composed out of 3 different sources which were edited together. Luxemburg is arguing that something similar should be done for the Quran, and that the historical roots of the Quran are in fact to be found partially in Aramaic text. And he says Arabic is of course the language of the Quran, but for a proper understanding also of the vocalization of the earliest version, because the earliest manuscripts of the Quran were not vocalized like later on. And vocalization can be done in different ways. No? If you just write consonants, there are different ways of reading the words if you make a vocalization. And one of the things, and that was of course something which has attracted the attention of the press, is that he says the martyrs who are being promised virgins in paradise every day, this is a misunderstanding. It's not originally written as that the martyrs will receive virgins in paradise. There is the name Huri. He says it is a misunderstanding on the basis of a wrong vocalization. What they will receive in paradise are fresh white grapes. White grapes, which can be, if you vocalize the word in a different way, virgin can also be read as grapes. And he said this is a tradition which goes back to Syria, and where you see that already in the Jewish and Christian tradition, the souls in paradise are receiving grapes from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that is what you see here. They are carrying very little white, yellowish fruits. And he said, well, this is an ancient tradition which was, like so many other Jewish and Christian traditions, were taken over in Islam. And they were not sex maniacs who were consuming virgins by the dozen. It's very simply a refreshment of fresh grapes every day. And after the discovery of this painting, it was a support for his idea. And initially I was a bit reluctant to give permission for the reproduction of this painting, because I thought, well, if somebody considers this a sacrilege, then some fanatic might come and hammer and destroy the painting. But of course, finally, you cannot prevent people from photographing a painting or publishing it. I'm not the one who has the copyright on it. So, in the latest edition of the Dutch book about these let's say recent theories about the reinterpretation of the Quran, it was used on the cover. But anyway, it is, I think, another interesting argument, and I think if you treat these things as a scholar, you should never consider it the final word, but if you realize that it was done from the Syriac tradition, and if we know that Syriac and Syrians are in the Aramaic tradition, that they share a common source with the earliest sources of Islam. So at least it's worthwhile, I think, considering this kind of theories. And it puts you to thinking, this kind of things.